On the endless highways of the United States, motels are refuges for lonely truckers. But some of those refuges shouldn't exist. Rick Harlow had been driving for 12 hours. The constant roar of the engine and the straight line of Interstate 40 had become a hypnotic lullaby, pushing him towards sleep. He had tried to fight fatigue with cheap gas station coffee, the truck's radio, even a bag of chips, but nothing seemed enough. Every time he blinked, he felt himself sinking into darkness for one too long second. Driving tired was like dancing with death. He knew it. He had seen overturned trucks, charred trailers, makeshift crosses along the roadside. Many of them were silent warnings of what could happen to anyone who didn't stop in time. It was almost 2 a.m. when, between drowsiness and the yellowish highway lights, a blue sign appeared by the side of the road. Motel, exit 217 vacancies. Rick straightened in his seat. His hands, tense on the wheel, relaxed when he read the letters. A place to rest, even for a few hours, was exactly what he needed. He turned onto the exit ramp. The secondary road was dark, flanked by twisted trees that seemed to lean toward the asphalt as if trying to trap him. The air there was heavier, carrying a smell of wet earth. After barely 5 minutes, he saw it. A 2-story rectangular building, its beige facade cracked, and a flickering neon sign. Sunset Inn. The parking lot was almost empty, except for a couple of old, rusty cars that seemed not to have moved in years. Rick parked his trailer to the side. Silence was absolute. No crickets, no wind, no distant engines. Just a faint buzz of neon. When he stepped out, the air smelled strange, a mix of old dust and damp wood. He walked to the reception, where warm light filtered through the window. Inside, an older man with gray hair. Thick glasses and a dim smile awaited him. His skin seemed almost translucent under the yellow lamp. "Welcome to the Sunset Inn. Single room, right?" he said in a deep, slow voice, as if speaking underwater. Rick nodded. "Yes, I just need a few hours of sleep." The receptionist leaned over the counter, pulled a metal key from a drawer, and handed it to him. A real heavy key with an amber plastic keychain. Rick turned it over in his hand. Nowadays, all motels use key cards. This already felt strange. Room 12. Good rest, Mr. Harlow. Rick looked up. Had he given his name? He didn't remember saying it. The hallway smelled of rancid detergent and damp carpet. The walls were adorned with yellowed paintings of desert landscapes that seemed painted half a century ago. When he opened his room door, a simple room greeted him. A double bed, an old box TV, heavy curtains, and a ceiling fan turning slowly, creaking repetitively. He collapsed onto the bed with his boots on. The mattress sank beneath him with a rough sound, as if the springs complained about feeling a human again after so long. Still, exhaustion overtook him within minutes. He slept, but it was not a peaceful sleep. He dreamed of footsteps in the hallway, whispers in a language he didn't understand, sharp knocks on the door that vanished every time he tried to get up. In the middle of the dream, he opened his eyes and thought he saw a silhouette standing at the foot of his bed, a tall, motionless figure watching him. He squeezed his eyes shut, and when he opened them again, no one was there. Dawn startled him awake. Light seeped through a gap in the curtains. Rick got up, dazed, and noticed everything was too quiet. No cars in the parking lot, no guest voices, not even the ceiling fan. He approached the window, drew the curtains, and his breath froze in his chest. The parking lot was empty. No cars, no neon sign, no reception. Only crumbling walls, broken windows, and weeds growing through the asphalt cracks. The entire motel seemed abandoned for decades. Confused, he ran to the door and stepped into the hallway. The walls were peeling, with holes revealing rotting wood. The smell was unbearable, a mixture of dust, dampness, and mold. The hallway that had pictures of night before now only showed rusty nails and black water stains. His heart pounded as he ran to the reception. What he found was a ruined counter covered in dust, scattered papers, and an old ledger left open. He approached. The names written were from another era. The dates went only until 1979. The last entry, almost erased by time, bore a name that made him tremble. Rick H. He stepped back as if he had touched fire. He felt the air closing around him. He ran toward the exit, the echo of his steps bouncing through the empty halls. Outside, the parking lot was still deserted, but there was his trailer, intact, waiting as if nothing had happened. The contrast was absurd, the gleaming vehicle amid a landscape of ruins. He climbed into the cab, started the engine, and drove off without looking back. When he returned to the interstate, he glanced in the rear-view mirror for the motel. There was nothing, only a vacant lot covered in rubble and weeds. "It can't be," he muttered to himself, throat dry. Hours later, once full daylight gave him some sense of security, Rick stopped at a service station. He bought coffee and went to the restroom to freshen up. That's when he reached into his jacket pocket and felt something metallic. He pulled it out and looked in horror. The motel key rusted, with the number 12 engraved on the metal and the cracked amber plastic keychain. His blood ran cold. He had spent the night in a ruined building. Yet he had tangible proof that the Sunset Inn had welcomed him. From then on, Rick never stopped at roadside motels. He preferred to sleep in his truck's cab. But sometimes, in dreams, he heard footsteps in that endless hallway and the receptionist's deep voice saying, "Welcome back, Mr. Harlow." In the loneliness of the road, the CB radio is the voice that accompanies truckers. But there are nights when those voices don't belong to the present or the living. Tom Big T Saunders had been traveling the roads of the United States for almost 20 years. He was a tall, sturdy man with a salt and pepper beard and hand hardened by the wheel. His truck, a red Peterbilt he called Bessie, was his only faithful companion. That night, he was traveling a dark stretch of Route 66 between Amarillo and Oklahoma City, a desert of asphalt where time seemed to stand still. The dashboard clock read 3:07 a.m. At that hour, the world was an empty space. Most cars had vanished, and the only constant sound was the engine roaring and tires scraping the pavement. Tom yawned, opened the window for fresh air, and switched on the CB radio. A crackling filled the cab, followed by the usual trucker voices on the channel. "Hey, big dog, where you at now?" "Almost to Tulsa, brother." Tom smiled. Those conversations, though trivial, made him feel accompanied. He turned the dial, looking for another frequency, and joined in with a greeting. "This is Big T, rolling down the 66 toward Oklahoma." "Who's copying?" He received a few friendly responses, some jokes, and for a few minutes the monotony of the road seemed to fade. Then it happened. Amid the murmur of voices, a harsh interference erupted. The sound was like a muffled scream followed by static. Then a broken voice filled with desperation. "Here, road hammer, accident, need help, mile 142 fire." Tom's heart jumped. "Road hammer, you copy? This is Big T. What happened?" There was silence. Just static for a few seconds that felt like forever. Then the voice returned, gasping. "My truck flipped. I can't get out the flames." Tom checked his GPS. He was near mile 142. He accelerated, knuckles gripping the wheel tightly. Every kilometer felt longer than the last. "Hold on, road hammer, I'm on my way," he said into the microphone. The radio crackled. The voice returned, weak. "Hurry, I don't have much time." When Tom reached mile 142, he slowed down. He looked for smoke, flames, any sign of an accident. But the road was empty. Not a trace of an overturned truck. He stopped at the roadside, switched on the hazard lights, and climbed down from the cab. The air was thick and still. The silence was so deep that even the hum of the power poles sounded like a distant whisper. He walked with a flashlight, checking the shoulder for tire marks, metal debris, the smell of burnt gasoline. Nothing. The voice erupted again on the radio. Still inside the cab. "Too late, brother. Too late for years." Tom froze. He climbed into the truck and grabbed the microphone. "What do you mean? Who are you?" The answer was a whisper that chilled him to the bone. "I'm Road Hammer, and no one came that night." The signal cut off. Tom stayed motionless, the radio in his hand, a shiver running down his spine. Then he remembered something. Months earlier at a rest area, he had heard the story of a trucker nicknamed Roadhammer. They said that in the 1980s, he had crashed at that very mile 142. His trailer was loaded with gasoline and exploded in seconds. The driver had been trapped in flames, screaming for help that never arrived in time. He shook his head. Was it a cruel prank by someone using the nickname? Or was he hearing an echo from the past? He started the truck. The road seemed narrower, darker than before. As he drove, he glanced in the rearview mirror. For a moment, he thought he saw the lights of a trailer following him in the distance. 2 bright headlights that didn't blink. But when he looked again, there was nothing. For the rest of the trip, the radio remained unnaturally silent. No voices, no jokes, not even the usual static. It was as if the frequency had died with that last whisper. When he arrived in Oklahoma City, he parked at a rest area and tried to sleep. But the dreams haunted him. He saw flames consuming a trailer, heard pounding on windows, ear-piercing screams repeating his name. He woke up sweating, with the echo of a burned voice calling him from a radio. Months later, Tom changed trucks. The company installed a new digital radio with more stable frequencies. He convinced himself that it had all been a coincidence, interference from some radio hobbyist, or just exhaustion. But the first stormy night, driving the same route, he heard something, a faint crackle on the frequency, static rising like a moan, and then, amid lightning and thunder, the voice he knew too well. "Big T, you copy? This is Roadhammer. Need help." Tom immediately turned off the radio. But in the silence that followed, he swore he heard, just behind his ear, a whisper that didn't come from the device. "This time, don't be late." In the desert of Arizona, some truckers claim there's a diner that appears out of nowhere and from which no one ever leaves. Jake Miller was driving his trailer along a secondary road cutting through the Arizona desert. The night was dark, and the wind whipped up dust devils that pelted the windshield. The main interstate was congested, and Jake had chosen this less-traveled route to save time and rest a bit before reaching Phoenix. His stomach growled insistently. The last meal had been a bag of pretzels at a rest area over 8 hours ago. Just as he began to wonder if he could make it to the next city, a neon sign appeared in the darkness. Diner open 24 hours. Next exit 7 miles. Jake frowned, surprised. He didn't remember seeing this sign on any map or plan route. Still, the promise of hot food and fresh coffee was irresistible. He turned the wheel and took the exit ramp. The secondary road narrowed, flanked by cacti and rocks. As he drove, the GPS signal began to flicker, showing a detour that didn't exist on the maps. But his need to stop outweighed any caution. Finally, the diner appeared. It was a chrome building with large windows, warm lights, and a bright sign reading Last Stop Diner. The parking lot was dusty, with only 2 parked cars, an old sedan and a rusty pickup. Everything seemed frozen in time. Jake parked his trailer and stepped out. The air was strange, dry, heavy, with a faint smell of coffee and freshly baked bread. Each step crunched on the dusty cement. Inside, the diner looked like it had been taken straight from the 1950s. Formica tables, bar stools, and a shiny chrome counter reflected the light from hanging lamps. Soft old jazz played from a tube radio. A blonde waitress, impeccably dressed with a mechanical smile, approached Jake. "Welcome to the Last Stop Diner. Honey, table for 1. Jake nodded and sat at the bar. While waiting for his order, he observed the other patrons, men and women of different ages, all motionless, chewing slowly. Some seemed like factory workers, others entire families. No one looked at him. No one spoke. The air grew oppressive. Jake felt watched, though he didn't know by whom. He tried to speak to a man in a hat at the far end of the bar, but the man didn't even turn his head. The waitress returned with his order, a double burger with fries and a steaming coffee. The smell was delicious, but at the first bite, Jake felt the meat was cold and dry, with a strange, metallic, almost rotten taste. He looked at the bun and saw faintly glowing green spots. The coffee tasted bitter, with an ashy aftertaste. He tried to get up to go to the bathroom, but the door closed before him. He pushed hard, opened it again, only to find himself in the same dining room, at the same table. A chill ran down his spine. "Here, no one leaves hungry," whispered the waitress behind him, with a twisted smile. "This is always your last stop." Jake got up, desperate. Try another door. Nothing worked. Every exit returned him to the same place. The bar, the tables, the motionless patrons, the waitress. Everything was the same. It was an endless loop. He tried to scream, but his voice seemed trapped in his throat. He ran to a window, hoping to see the parking lot and the road. But the window only reflected himself, sitting at the bar, the rotten burger before him. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Jake could no longer tell. The jazz music repeated in a loop. The patrons continued chewing without looking, and the waitress remained beside him, unchanging. He knelt in front of the customer and asked desperately, "Where are we?" But the person slowly lifted their gaze, revealing a cadaverous face, with empty eyes that seemed to absorb light. Jake stumbled back, tripping over a chair. Time seemed frozen. Every second was an eternity, every breath a struggle. He tried to recall any trucker story mentioning that diner. He remembered rumors at rest stops. Some travelers had seen a diner that vanished at dawn, and those who entered never returned. Fear paralyzed him. He realized he was trapped. His mind tried to rationalize. Maybe it was a dream. Maybe exhaustion had led him to hallucinate. But his body felt the cold of despair and the smell of rotten bread embedded in his skin. Finally, he fell to his knees before the bar, facing his hands, while the waitress leaned over him. Her voice was a whisper echoing in his mind. "You cannot leave, no one leaves." At sunrise, when the first rays of sun began to illuminate the road, a passing driver saw something strange. A red trailer stopped at the roadside, engine running, lights on. There was no sign of its driver, only the truck, silent and expectant, as if waiting for someone to claim it. Some truckers say that if you drive at night through Arizona and see a sign saying "Last Stop Diner," it's best to keep going, because whoever enters never comes out. And in the solitude of the desert, if you listen carefully, you can hear a whisper repeating among the wind and rocks, "Welcome to the last stop."